One of the biggest discussion points when it does come to Ninjago Dragon's Rising has been the concept of the merged realms. All of the lands that we've become familiar with and the ones that we haven't explored yet, all coming together to make something new. Now, I personally think this is one of the most fascinating concepts we've ever seen when it does come to the show. But the thing is that it's shrouded in so much mystery, and I've always tried to actually deconstruct what the merge truly is. But there's an aspect that we'd never really considered before. And that is the actual realms themselves, the very pieces of land that came together to create the merge. The thing is that pre-merge, we barely knew anything about the realms to begin with. We knew little to nothing, and we had some scattered information, some weird bits of information here and there, but we never truly had a conclusive idea on how these realms actually went about their day. It is really fascinating that we don't have an answer, and I've always been curious as to what it could be. So I have been scouring everything that we know about Ninjago. I've been looking through all the little bits of information that we have, and I think I have an understanding on how the realms actually worked pre-merge. But because of that information, I think I've also come to an understanding on how the realms are working post-merge. I think I actually understand basically every single question that we have when it does come to the realms coming together themselves. And I want to present it to you guys today and see what you guys think, because I realize that the answers that I've got makes sense. It is really crazy to think, but I honestly don't see an issue when it does come to this idea that I do have, because I think I have the answer to Traveler's Tea. I think I have the answer to how the ninja actually ended up in different realms, and I think I have the answer on what actually caused the merge itself, what Wu actually sped up to cause the merge. So I'm gonna present my findings to you today, show through everything that I've got and see what you guys think, because I am truly in love with this idea that I've got. And I have to also say, before I get into it, a massive shout out to PARACHUTINKITTEN. I ran by so much of this information to her, and we were sat there constructing ideas when it did come to this theory. So I want to make sure she gets the credit she very much does deserve. Her contributions to this video were genuinely invaluable, so yeah, please go and check her out. She debatably makes the best content when it does come to this platform. But without further ado, I've taken up too much time in this intro, and let's look into the realms themselves. Take a look at this theory that I have dubbed the sandwich theory. Now, before anything else, you may be wondering why it is called the sandwich theory, and that is because it actually is a very good depiction of what I believe to be the actual state of the realms before the merge itself actually happened, but I'll get into that more in a moment. Now, the thing is that this whole concept started off because I was looking at the merge realms. I've always been trying to solve the merge, and I do have some decent theories on it, but then I started thinking about how the merge actually would come to be. How did the merge actually function inherently? It seems to be that there's so many different things to consider with the merge, and then it all started to fall into place, more specifically in terms of how things were beforehand. The sandwich theory actually answers how things were laid out in terms of the realms before the merge actually began. Of course, we know for a fact that they were all within the cauldron of realms, but that was basically it. But this theory basically suggests that every single realm of Ninjago is basically stacked on top of one another, essentially forming a sandwich. Now, every single realm being on top of each other actually makes a lot of sense when you consider a load of details that we have picked up over the time when it does come to the show. The first thing it explains every single form of known realm hopping that we have actually seen when it does come to Ninjago. The first form of transport, for example, Traveler's Tea. Now, Traveler's Tea is used to basically go between the realms, and it's just a portal-like feature. Now, the thing is that when you consider this idea that they act essentially as portals between realms, you realize that there is a direct correlation on how Traveler's Tea truly works. You think about the fact that it goes between any and every single realm, but seemingly pops out in very specific areas. Now, the best example I can give to how Traveler's Tea would work in this stacked-like scenario is actually like a nether portal from Minecraft. It goes to the exact same spot in the respective realm, but essentially just treats itself as a jump directly up or down between each respective realm. This would go on to explain why Wu had to go to a specific mountain for the Realm of Madness to find Garmadon. This also explains why the ninja went to a specific point in the Netherrealm to go directly back to the monastery. There are so many instances of Traveler's Tea that completely justifies this way of explaining it, taking it as the exact same point just above or below. It just weirdly works. This also goes on to actually retroactively explain another thing, which is how Garmadon became king of the underworld. Because when you look at how Traveler's Tea was used in Season 11, you notice that when Wu opens Traveler's Tea in the monastery, you see the actual dark fortress that eventually became the Ferris wheel. And if you think of it in context of it's a direct same point but in a different realm, just again above or below, you realize that it actually explains how Garmadon was able to fall from the monastery into the underworld directly on top of all of the Skulkin. It just simply is, they both exist on top of one of another, just in the exact same space. The next form of transport this does explain is actually dragon travel. We know that the dragons are able to hop between realms and they're able to do it seemingly easily. Now, in the few times we've actually seen the dragons go through these realm-like portals, you actually know that they go through these tunnels. Whether they're more dirt-like elemental tunnels like the pilots or just a more realm-like looking portal that we see within Season 9. You see that they go through these tunnels between realms and they go essentially up or down. Again, like I said in the pilots, we see how the ninja go directly into the ground. In Hunted, they go up. You actually see that the dragons actually go in a physical space. So if you understand this idea that they're in a stack, you realize that the dragons are going up and down because there are tunnels between each and respective layer. Thirdly is actually going to be the Realm Crystal. When the Realm Crystal is actually utilized, you will note that basically all of the portals that we actually see from the Realm Crystal are up or down. Again, taking this stacked layer approach into mind, it makes sense that essentially the Realm Crystal is just tearing holes between the respective layers. Similar in vein to the tunnels like the dragons, but just in a more direct sense. So you go up or down to each and respective realm, and that is how the Realm Crystal works. And then the last main form of realm hopping that this does explain is actually going to be the unconventional methods of actually going between realms. For example, you can go to the underworld through the Fire Temple, or you can go through the Blind Man's Eye to get to the Cloud Kingdom. You are going down through the earth or up through the sky. Again, the layered approach completely works. The last unconventional sense of realm hopping that this does explain is actually going to be Asphira's magic that we see in Season 11. When she actually banishes Zane and also the Titan mech, you will note that they do basically go vertically. In the depictions that we've actually seen, also including the land bounty, you will see that again they go through these tunnel-like features. Again, like they're hopping up or down through a respective realm. It just kind of works. Beyond explaining the actual means of realm hopping, this also does go to explain the little idiosyncrasies that we do know about certain realms in particular. We know that some realms have these unique features that are only applicable to them, and in the stack formation, it does completely work. The main ones I want to talk about here are going to be the Departed Realm and also going to be the Nether Realm. Both of these realms have been noted to have some things that are unique to them. The Departed Realm is unique in the fact that it is not accessible by traditional realm hopping. It seems to be that there are some really weird ways, like Wu's very special Traveler's Tea, but that is actually kind of beside the point. We know for a fact that it's not accessible by the Realm Crystal to begin with. But anyways, it makes sense to believe that this would actually be the realm that is at the very top of this stack. The realm just sitting above all others because it's just simply away from everything else. It's where someone goes, they ascend up, like how we traditionally see people who have departed. And then like I said, in terms of the Nether Realm, the main thing that makes this realm unique is actually the fact that this realm is actually difficult to get back from. There is no mention of it being difficult to get to, just coming back from it is particularly difficult. So what if the Nether Realm is actually at the bottom of this stack? What if the Nether Realm is the furthest realm because it's the lowest point above all of them? This would actually go on to explain why it's difficult, because traveling down is very easy, but traveling up most likely isn't. This does lead on to a further question of how are all of the realms formatted in this stack. I don't have an answer for all of them definitively, I will say. I just know that certain realms are neighbours of the others. This actually could even tie into the sister idea. Maybe the sister is the realm that it's above or below the other one. But anyway, I like to think that, like I said, the Nether realms at the bottom, departed realms at the top. I think the very centre is going to be the first realm. The realm of the Oni and the Dragon would be an ideal centre point because it was the one that became every other, so all of them just stemmed up or down. The only other ones that we do know for a fact is just essentially that Ninjago has to be both below the Cloud Kingdom and above the Underworld, but that is basically it. But the point is that it does work in this formation, and just does go to explain a lot of things that we do know about the realms. So with the formation out of the way, and also how to realm hop in accordance with this formation also out of the way, it does just lead to one more begging idea for me, which is how does this actually coincide with everything that we do know about the merge? Now, I actually think this coincides perfectly with an older theory that I made, one that just talks about the merge in general, and how it's still actually happening. So if you haven't actually watched that video, I would highly recommend you do so. But besides that, I think that if you consider the stack-like formation in accordance with the merge, it actually fully does work. I believe that when the merge was actually occurring, all of these realms that were stacked together essentially fell in on itself, and that is actually why it's called the sandwich. It made a sandwich, they came together. The realms themselves actually all collapsed in on each other when the merge actually occurred, and when you consider it in this way, a lot more of things does make sense. The first thing that this would explain is just simply put how the merged lands actually came to be. The thing is that we know that the merged realms actually did cause a lot of really weird things when it does come to the land. Neighborhoods are missing, land is changing like we know for a fact. It seems to be that things are very difficultly coming together. Now this makes sense if you consider the idea that each and every single realm fell on top of each other and they were all trying to fill out the exact same space. And because they simply couldn't exist in the same place, they all spread out and created the merged realms that we did actually see. And again, this goes on to explain a whole lot more. This goes on to explain why people are missing. This goes on to explain how people like Aaron's parents were actually able to just vanish. The thing is that if all the realms came on top of each other, it means that displaced land that we know does exist just simply didn't know what to do with itself when all of the realms did fall on top of each other. And that's how these bubbles and pockets that eventually get into the hands of the administration actually come to be. I believe that these pockets of land and these pieces of land that are missing are just essentially byproducts of when the realms fell on top of each other. Because when I think they fell on top of each other and then divvied out and diverged away from each other, I believe that these realms essentially exploded. And the bubbles that contained people like Aaron's parents were the byproduct of them. And I think that they do actually still reside within the Cauldron of Realms until the administration actually does pick them up. The bigger one though is that it does explain how all of the ninja ended up completely separated when they were all together canonically when it does come to the merge itself. They were all with each other in the Destiny's Bounty, or Jay was in his own mech, but they were all remaining next to each other and then they all just don't remember anything. If you take into consideration that all of the realms were on top of each other and basically exploded out, it would make sense that all of the ninja split up because they all were attached to different realms when the lands actually exploded. They were all on the same piece of land, just in a different realm. So when everything went away from each other and all the realms divided away, all of the ninja were basically in the same spot, but not. They just landed on a different pocket of land that existed in the exact same spot as once. That explains how you can have some ninja that were relatively close to each other, like Nier and Jay, but also have other ninja that basically were nowhere near anyone else. It just goes on to actually justify how the ninja were able to separate the way that they did. And then lastly, it actually goes on to justify how so many monasteries can actually exist as well. What if when all of the realms fell on top of each other and exploded away, a byproduct of the merge was that when every single realm was on top of each other, the point that was actually on top of the monastery, when that explosion occurred, duplicated the monastery itself. That is how identical copies can exist across the lands. That's how everything is the exact same, just in a different space. That is where the monastery would exist in every single realm if it was in the exact same point. That actually goes on to explain why this can truly exist and why they're all weirdly connected. It just makes everything make sense in my opinion. Again, it completely justifies the ninja, it justifies the lost people, the monasteries. Everything is completely justified if you consider them in a stack-like formation. If you consider them like a sandwich, it just simply works. But it does go on to ask one more question when it does come to this theory, which is, how is it that they actually all fell on top of each other? How does the merge actually occur, and how does it have anything to do when it does come to Wu? And again, I think I answered that question. I think the merge occurred because every single realm sits basically in a floating space where they do naturally move. I think all of the realms existed within the Cauldron of the Realms, and they were all just basically shifting on a horizontal axis in alignment, or more importantly, not in alignment with each other. They all just essentially existed. Again, this goes on to explain how the merge can still occur and why Cole thinks the land is still shifting. The realms naturally shifted. They're just doing it now when they are merged together. But the merge actually does occur when all of these shifting realms completely line up. Think of like a planetary alignment when all the planets come together to make a perfect line. This happened with all of the merged realms because they all lined up perfectly in that stack. And when they all line up finally like that, they all collapse in on each other. If Wu did truly accelerate the merge and actually made it happen a lot sooner than it was meant to, it would make sense that Wu basically manipulated all of the realms to actually line up with each other to actually cause this collapse. It would actually go on to explain how the merge can actually be accelerated, because if it was just something that could just somehow happen at some point in time, it would not make sense if Wu was able to accelerate it just because. But if they're actually physical realms on top of each other that could be manipulated like that, it works in context on how someone could actually devise a plan to actually make it so it could happen. This also goes on to explain how the dragon cores could actually stabilize something like that. Creational energy is shifting the realms of creation. Creational energy is the thing that are keeping all of the realms moving, and just if it happened to all line up, that is how the merge would occur. Right? Well, that's the thing. If it is creational dragon-like source energy that is causing it, who is a known elemental master or has the elemental essence of creation? Wu. Again, it just works. It is really scary to think that this could be the solution to basically everything that we do know about the realms. This stack-like formation is something that does clearly fit with everything that we do know. If there's anything that I haven't mentioned by chance in this video, I could guarantee that you could still link it in with this concept. I truly think the realms were all stacked on top of each other and explains away everything that we know about the realms. But I think for now, this is going to be where I leave it. I think on an overall, I have made a very compelling case to show how the realms are aligned how I am describing them today. I think that I have a very compelling argument. I don't have any solid proof, which is really unfortunate and was the only holdback of this theory, but the thing is that when you do take everything into consideration, it just simply works like I said. You could honestly knock it down to coincidence, but this is a whole lot of coincidence if you take a look at it. So I truly do think I'm onto something here. I really do think everything can be explained in accordance with the sandwich theory. And that's why I want to know what you guys think. Is there anything more that you want to add to it? Or do you disagree with me in any way? I would love to know what you think, because I genuinely stand by this. And it's to the point where I'm almost considering this factual. Because again, I don't know how else to explain it, and this just works a little too well. But besides all of that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of you are absolute legends for actually supporting me, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But like I said, that's about it for today, and take care. Okay,